a sacred text filled with fantastic tales of an awesome supernatural force. But what if that force wasn't God? What if it was a UFO? In Ezekiel, what was that gleaming wheel within a wheel that descended on the prophet? In the Sodom and Gomorrah of Genesis, where did the devastating fire and brimstone come from? In Exodus, what was that presence in the sky that led Moses through the desert? Were these the actions of God? Or might these mysterious forces in the skies have been UFOs in the Bible? Throughout the Bible, mysterious aerial phenomena appear and alter the course of human history. To religious scholars, these stories are an infallible record of God's presence and godly events. But some modern-day researchers offer a different theory. Perhaps these stories really describe alien visitations.
Is it possible that extraterrestrials have been involved in human history for thousands of years, and if so, did they have contact with the biblical people? And as you look in the Bible, there are many reports of UFOs that contact biblical people. A chariot of fire that abducts Elijah and takes him off into the sky.
Elijah was one of the most revered Jewish prophets of his day. According to ufologists, the biblical account of his encounter with chariots of fire is a detailed description of what might be termed a UFO. This encounter took place as Elijah traveled along the Jordan River, accompanied by his successor, Elisha. Elijah knew his life was in danger because he had upset many powerful religious figures.
Elijah called out for God to help him. There was a young man with him, Elisha, and he didn't see it. But suddenly there were a number of chariots of fire around him.
Behold, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven.
In the Old Testament, Elisha tells a story about being caught up or swept away by a chariot of fire, or a conveyance that was glowing brightly hot.
According to this passage, Elijah was spirited up into the sky, never to be seen again by mortal man.
The concept of Elijah being taken up into a chariot of fire is an abduction.
Certainly modern UFOs are reported to take humans on board and take them away. So I think we've got, in modern UFO reports, something that could have functioned very well to carry Elijah into the sky.
If we were to take what Elisha was describing and compare it to events of people being taken aboard unidentified flying objects or flying saucers, it may very well be the same type of event occurring in those days compared to what they could compare it to.
What we think of as a chariot and what we think of as a flying saucer may seem worlds apart. But some contend that perhaps they aren't so different after all.
Chariots is actually a word that means some form of conveyance, and back in those days, the closest thing they could compare these moving objects to was a chariot. So therefore, they were a conveyance that was glowing or bright or had a fiery appearance. And and that was probably the closest association they could make to these conveyances in the sky.
Some speculate that the traditional interpretation of biblical passages is hampered, not only by the ancients' lack of technical references, but also by inaccuracies in the Bible's translation into English by the Court of King James, which was completed in 1611.
The English that was used in the court of England in the 17th century was different than the English that was used by the common people, and for a specific purpose. Because the court of England wanted to keep themselves separated from the commoners.
To better understand the original meaning of biblical texts, researchers refer to Strong's Exhaustive Concordance. This book, completed in 1890, is an alphabetical index of every word used in the Bible, listing each occurrence of that word and the context in which it is used. By doing this, some researchers believe they have discovered another connection between Elijah's story and UFOs. In the King James Version, Elijah tells of being whisked up into heaven. But some now believe that perhaps he wasn't talking about the godly realm.
When it comes to the word heaven, in the court of King James, the word heaven literally meant the sky. So in the hundreds of places in the Bible that heaven is used, it actually means sky. It is never described as a place that you go to for a particular reward.
Biblical stories about mysterious events in the sky may not be the only ancient sources hinting at UFOs.
As far as the religious beliefs concerning UFOs, they're found throughout every culture. If you go into the most ancient of texts, the old Sumerian texts, they're in there, they're painted on Egyptian walls in ancient tombs. The yogis and lamas in the Eastern thought call them vimanas, and they call them the chariots of the gods.
Thousands of years ago, in an amazing feat of precision, the Nazca people of Peru created perfectly straight lines stretching across their landscape. A plain 37 miles long and a mile wide. Some ufologists wondered whether the design, resembling a modern airport, was used as a runway for alien spaceships. The lines intersect, forming enormous geometric shapes, and include drawings of insects, mammals, and a mysterious humanoid being, which some say resembles a man in a spacesuit.
You can only see them from the sky, and so you have to wonder if these lines weren't drawn to impress beings that were flying in the skies, and therefore the cultures that drew these were trying to at least get the attention of the sky people that they knew were there.
Other ancient civilizations also believed that they were visited by extraterrestrial beings. Kukulkan, a patron god of the Mayans, is said to have descended from the sky and bestowed upon them complex technological and mathematical principles.
One of the ways we can show this is a distinct possibility is by the advanced mathematical capabilities of the Mayans. For instance, a Dresden Codex, where they're showing very advanced astronomical tables where they can chart the solar eclipses, the lunar eclipses.
When you talk about the Mayans receiving knowledge from ancient gods who came from the sky, their mathematics, their astronomy, I believe that's entirely rooted in fact. because that same story is echoed everywhere. Native Americans, South American Indians, China, all the Orient, India. That story, or some version of it, that gods came from the sky and gave technology to mankind.
Stories repeating over time and across cultures. Eerily similar themes that appear again and again, raising new questions.
I think that we've had UFOs around for centuries, and I think they've surveyed the Earth and even landed on Earth and made contact. There have been some things they've done that we'll say have shaped our development very radically, and I think the biblical religion is an example of how they've shaped our development.
Coming up, Moses led the Hebrews out of Egypt. But what led Moses? It was a pivotal moment in the development of the Judeo-Christian religion. The great exodus of the Jews out of Egypt. At the head of this mass migration was Moses, who was in turn guided by a mysterious aerial phenomenon.
And the Lord went before them, by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, that they might travel by day and by night.
It is this element of the story that is especially intriguing to modern UFO researchers. Just who or what was this protector?
I think it was a very large UFO that was dark during the day, and then at night it glowed and provided light for the encampment below them. And at times it would hover for months, for weeks and months at a time.
The pillar cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night started leading the Exodus. This was clearly an object in the sky that apparently contained some type of intelligent reality. That was in voice communication with Moses during the whole of the Exodus. UFOs are basically playing a game of follow the leader. UFO is the leader.
Though the Pharaoh initially allowed the exodus of the Jews, he changed his mind and charged after them with all the chariots of Egypt and hundreds of his men. It was a chase that led to one of the most spectacular events in the Bible. As the Pharaoh's armies caught up to the Israelites by the banks of the Red Sea.
I believe this reality hovered over the Red Sea and caused the parting of the Red Sea.
The theory goes that the object's extraterrestrial propulsion system was what physically pushed the waters aside, allowing Moses and his followers safe passage.
Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the water may come back upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen."
If the parting of the Red Sea was done, as I believe it was, by some type of anti-gravitational force, the biblical people wouldn't have understood how to explain that, even if they saw it happening. But I think if modern people had been there to see the same thing occur, they might have given a technical review of what was going on rather than a supernatural review.
even after escaping the Egyptians, the biblical Israelites faced an arduous journey toward their promised land of milk and honey. Along the way, the pillar of cloud shadowed the Israelites' every move, protecting them as well as guiding them.
The pillar of a cloud during the day is actually providing a canopy. In the area that they were moving, it's a wilderness area, and the temperatures can reach up to 120 degrees, and this went on for 40 years.
I believe the pillar dropped manna from it onto the ground to feed the Jewish people during the 40 years of their exodus, to keep them alive in the wilderness, while what I would call a huge religious conditioning project was going on in the hands of this extraterrestrial reality.
In some modern interpretations, this UFO provided much more than shelter and food. As the Israelites approached the slopes of Mount Sinai, the pillar of cloud again communicated with Moses.
The Lord said to Moses, "Be ready in the morning, and come up in the morning to Mount Sinai, and present yourself there to me on top of the mountain."
When Jehovah landed on the mount, he gave a specific warning to keep people away. Yet he allowed Moses to go in. And Moses went up into the mountain and apparently into the craft that was on the mountain.
Then Moses went up on the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain. Now the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on top of the mountain in the sight of the people of Israel. And Moses entered the cloud.
Modern theorists speculate that this time on the mount was spent inside a UFO.
And when he came back down the mountain, his face shone or glowed. The implication is that there's some type of energy transfer going on between human reality and this extraterrestrial reality.
When Moses descended from Mount Sinai, in his hands were the 10 Commandments, the supreme guidelines for his people.
And afterward, all the people of Israel came near, and he gave them in commandment all that the Lord had spoken with him in Mount Sinai.
But if this enormous pillar in the sky was truly a UFO and gave the Israelites the moral framework for their society, what did the ancients make of it?
According to Moses, the individual that was inside the pillar of fire and the pillar of a cloud was Jehovah. Jehovah is the name of the national God of Israel.
Their God was a God of the sky, a God of the heavens, a God who made heavens and earth. I don't think it was hard for the Hebrew people to believe God is in the pillar, cloud, and fire. God is the one in the UFO there.
Some believe the influence of UFOs is not limited to the Jewish Bible, that it can be traced into the Christian faith as well. Thousands of years after the Exodus, the New Testament records the transfiguration of Jesus.
And he was transfigured before them. His garments became glistening, intensely white, as no floor on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah and Moses, and they were talking to Jesus.
It was surprising to see Moses and Elijah on the mountain with Jesus, because Moses had been dead for hundreds of years, and Elijah, although he never died on earth, was taken off into the sky in a chariot of fire and was never seen again until now.
Were Were Elijah's chariots of fire and the glowing cloud that met Moses on Mount Sinai one and the same? And did that same cloud or UFO transport Elijah and Moses to Jesus' transfiguration?
We have a pattern that's very much part of the biblical pattern. That is, some strange object shows up in the sky and a voice comes from it. You get this during the Exodus with a pillar of cloud and a voice coming to Moses. You get it in the Transfiguration story. So whenever you then look at the biblical prophets who are saying strange things, the issue is the extraterrestrial reality informing their minds to say the things they're saying.
Coming up, the close encounter of an ancient prophet. More than half a millennium before the birth of Christ, a group of Jewish exiles was held captive along the banks of the Chebar River. Among them, a righteous Israelite named Ezekiel. He became a prophet, predicting the fall of Jerusalem. Later, he also preached the message of hope and salvation. But first, Ezekiel was enraptured by something in the sky.
As I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness round it, and fire flashing forth continually. And in the midst of the fire, as it were gleaming bronze.
Ezekiel believed this event was an encounter with God. But UFO researchers wonder if it might have been something else. More than any other passage in the Bible, Ezekiel's detailed account of this sighting is continually studied and analyzed by ufologists, who argue that it is a biblical alien encounter.
I saw a wheel upon the earth. As for the appearance of the wheels and their construction, their appearance was like the gleaming of a chrysolite.
Ezekiel is describing a flying, spinning, glowing, metallic object that ascends and lands in front of him. In the modern age, what we see are flying, glowing, spinning metallic objects that ascend and descend just like the objects that are described in the Bible. It's not an illogical conclusion to assume that these craft that we see today may be the exact same craft that they're describing in the Bible in ancient times.
Their construction being, as it were, a wheel within a wheel. When they went into any of their four directions, without turning as they went.
You can tell he was struggling with the description. Now, that's also true of UFO experiences that people have. They're having difficulty describing what they're seeing, and it matches this description that we see in the Bible.
The four wheels had rims, and they had spokes, and their rims were full of eyes round about.
What I believe he's talking about is devices, mechanical devices. And in the time that he was discussing this, there was nothing mechanical. The wheel was about the most sophisticated device that they had.
When the wheels of Ezekiel hovered above him, he may have thought he was seeing a supernatural reality, but what if it was simply a high-tech reality? How do you tell the difference between the supernatural and the super-technological? The more highly technical a reality becomes, the more supernatural it seems.
And from the midst of it came the likeness of four living creatures. Wherever their spirit would go, they went, and the wheels rose along with them. For the spirit Jesus was in the wheels.
It describes an object that comes from the mountainside and actually disgorges some type of intelligent beings from its interior.
As for the likeness of their faces, each had the face of a man in front. The four had the face of a lion on the right side. The four had the face of an ox on the left side. And the four had the face of an eagle at the back.
In his day and time, quite literally, there's nothing unnatural in the sky. There are no planes. There are no helicopters. There aren't kites. There aren't even any balloons. And in his day and age, nothing moved unless it was alive or unless something living was moving it. So I use the analogy of living creatures.
Over the heads of the living creatures, there was the likeness of a firmament, shining like crystal. And when they went, I heard the sound of their wings, like the sound of many waters, like the thunder of the Almighty.
He sees a firmament, a very large object. So many of the engineers that have looked at this verse believe that what he's talking about is actually landing gear. He describes lights running up and down them. He describes rings of flashing lights around them. And he speaks of a being coming out of the craft, coming out of the firmament above him, and speaking to him.
If these visitors were extraterrestrial in nature, why did they appear to Ezekiel?
Did this initial encounter with Ezekiel lead to some form of mind control, which led him to write this very long book of prophecy about the future of Israel and about the military and political consequences of what was going to happen in the future? I didn't know about this, but this is certainly one of the key concepts that theologians would have to explore once the UFO reality were admitted to be real.
Coming up, angels, messengers from God, or visitors from another planet. Angels, God's divine messengers. Their ethereal images appear in art and architecture across the millennia and around the globe. Mentioned hundreds of times in the Bible, angels were present at some of the most significant events in ancient history. But what are angels? Some ufologists wonder if angels and aliens are one and the same.
I would speculate that the angels of the Bible and of the Quran would possess the same powers and have the same capabilities in a supernatural sense as what we would call these occupants of the UFO or the extraterrestrials today.
According to the Bible, St. Peter, the patriarch of the Catholic Church, was saved by an angel with mysterious abilities.
The Apostle Peter was put in jail, and to make sure that he stayed where he was supposed to be, he was put in chains in his jail cell, and he had a guard sleeping on each side of him.
And behold, an angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. And he struck Peter on the side and woke him, saying, "Get up quickly." fell off his hands.
The angel led Peter out of his cell, past the unconscious guards.
When the angel and Peter left the jail, the gate to the jail then opened on its own accord.
And they went out and passed on through one street, and immediately the angel left him.
But the Bible passage does not tell how the angel got in the jail in the first place.
The answer might be that the angel has the ability to go through solid walls, and this is sometimes reported in modern UFO cases.
Modern theorists have also looked at other angelic accounts in the Bible for possible connections to extraterrestrials. They found that, much like descriptions of alien encounters, angels are often depicted conveying their message through visions and dreams.
Would space aliens use our unconscious mind, our dream life, to inform us of their will for us? That's what happens in Matthew 2, certainly.
Behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Rise, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there till I tell you.
Joseph is warned in a dream that he should get out of town quickly because Herod is going to try to kill off Jesus.
After his dream, Joseph hurried his infant son out of harm's way, and Jesus' life was spared.
The dream issue is a big part of the Judeo-Christian psychic life. How much of this is due to the direct intervention of the aliens, we don't know. Going back to Abraham in the Old Testament, there's a passage in Genesis that says that the Lord caused a deep sleep to come on Abraham. And in this deep sleep, God communicated things to Abraham that he wanted to communicate.
But Abraham also physically interacted with angels. Though understood to be superhuman, these heavenly creatures were often mistaken to be mere mortals.
There's the story of Abraham in the book of Genesis, where three beings come to meet him. He does not know that they are different from any other humans, and he does the Middle East thing. He's a very good host. He invites them to stay for food, and he asks his wife Sarah to help in the preparation of this food.
His visitors seemed normal, but soon they displayed some strange abilities.
Eventually, through conversation, the men say to Abraham that his wife Sarah is going to conceive and bear a son. Abraham finds this almost impossible to believe. His wife Sarah, who's kind of hanging out around the tent, starts laughing inside herself, not out loud. And the three men accuse her of laughing. She denies it. But in any case, this implies that they could hear her mind telepathically. The question of telepathy and whether or not these beings could read the mind both of Abraham and of his wife Sarah is a big issue.
Telepathy is also a trait often associated with modern UFO extraterrestrials.
But they go away, and sure enough, she becomes pregnant. And now in retrospect, Abraham realizes he's had what he calls a divine encounter, but I think we might now call it an extraterrestrial encounter.
Within a year, Sarah gave birth to their son, Isaac, who became the bloodline through which the Jewish nation was established.
One of the things that are reported among UFO abduction cases now is that very often the alien beings seem to be interested in the human reproductive process. Right here in the story of Abraham and Sarah, we have the possibility that aliens are involved in the reproductive process of Abraham and Sarah, and that Isaac is here due to some type of extraterrestrial intervention. So that some of the what you would call extraterrestrial stories in the Bible indicate psychic control of the human race, or if not the whole human race, at least chosen people in the human race. So whenever you then look at the biblical prophets who are saying strange things, the issue is the extraterrestrial reality informing their minds to say the things they're saying.
Coming up, was it God? Or was it aliens when Sodom and Gomorrah met their fiery destruction? Most of the events in the Bible that ufologists ascribe to extraterrestrial intelligence have effects that run from the benign to the beneficial. But that is not always the case. As in the story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. As told in the Bible, the inhabitants of these two sister cities were so debauched and sinful that there was no hope of turning back their evil ways. The only solution, total extermination.
Rained on Sodom and Gomorrah, brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities.
In his 1968 book, The Chariots of the Gods, Eric von Daniken presented a different theory about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Eric von Daniken had speculated that Sodom and Gomorrah might have been destroyed by extraterrestrials using nuclear weapons. The reason he came to this conclusion is the description that fire and brimstone came down from the sky. It certainly would get the attention of planet Earth pretty fast if we really concluded that extraterrestrials had destroyed whole cities because they didn't like them.
However, there are other theories about the destruction of these cities. Some believe the story may have been used as a mythological warning. A lesson passed down through the millennia to reinforce the importance of piety.
God removed the Sodomites and the citizens of Gomorrah from existence, and that's what the text talks about. Fire rained down from heavens and wiped them all out. The text tells us that when a human civilization becomes reprobate, they can't be saved.
The other way to look at Sodom and Gomorrah is that if the towns ever actually existed, and if those towns were destroyed, were almost certainly destroyed by some natural means. It's such a metaphor for a religious idea, that is, man was evil and deserved to be punished for his iniquity.
Archaeological evidence has emerged that sheds some scientific light upon this ancient story.
Archaeologists, in looking at the southeastern plain of the Dead Sea, have located approximately the right place where we would expect to see cities of Sodom and Gomorrah.
The remains of these cities, called Babadra and Numeria, offer tantalizing clues that may prove part of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah.
In Babadra, we see that there was broad destruction across the mound. Next, we find at Numeria that there is a layer of ash which can suggest that the city was burnt.
But the cause of their destruction still cannot be scientifically proven. And therefore, what or who caused it remains open to speculation.
The bigger issue is whether or not extraterrestrials are so much involved in the development of life on Earth that they in fact would destroy a whole city or perhaps a whole group of people.
That the biblical God or angels were really UFOs from another planet may be a radical idea. But it's possible that modern-day theorists aren't the first ones to suppose this extraterrestrial angle. In the 15th century, artwork portraying biblical scenes began to emerge, with mysterious saucer-shaped objects seeming to hover in the sky.
I find that the Renaissance artwork itself is very intriguing just all by itself. You've got these images of UFOs with the Madonna image and scenes of Jesus on the cross. And in the background, you've got a little black dot or a saucer-shaped UFO with a dome on it. And what these were done 1,500 years after the fact.
It's a matter of a Rorschach test for the observer. You place attributes onto those paintings and drawings and artwork. They may be hats, they may be crockery or saucers or other things of that shape, but not necessarily flying saucers.
But more and more, people seem to believe that UFOs are real and are alien. Even organized religion hasn't completely closed the book on the extraterrestrial possibility.
The Vatican has made a statement that said that they are not to be feared and not to be demonized.
Monsignor Corrado Balducci, who's a consultant to the Vatican, has been on Italian television several times saying that he believes UFOs are real and that they are extraterrestrial.
If these theories are proven true, what might the future hold for Western religion?
Western religion would change completely if extraterrestrials were proved to be real. It would change all the stories in the Bible, and it would change how we thought about the Bible, because a highly technological extraterrestrial may provide some explanations for some of the miracles that happen in the Bible.
But in the absence of hard evidence that either proves or disproves the existence of UFOs, belief in the UFO phenomenon is based mostly on faith, much the same basis as a belief in God.
Giant balls of ice hurtling around the sun, fragments from the beginning of time, making a beeline straight for our house? Not my house! For a whole week, all will be answered, as well as the most profound question of all. Did I really change the world? No, really, did I?
Out of This World Week, all this week, only on the History Channel.